Emma Grace Sullivan was 20 years old and completely homeless. Her father had been sent to prison when she was 8 years old, convicted of crimes she never fully understood. Her mother, unable to cope with the shame and financial burden of his absence, had abandoned her at a state facility when she was 14. Emma had been living on the streets of Seattle for 6 years, moving from shelter to shelter, working minimum wage jobs, sleeping in her car when she could afford gas, sleeping outside when she couldn't. She had one dream that kept her alive during those long, cold nights, to find a place that was entirely her own. Then she found the Lighthouse listing on a county property auction website. An abandoned lighthouse on the rocky coast of the Pacific Northwest, about 40 miles north of Seattle, perched on a cliff overlooking the gray-green waters of the Sound. The opening bid was $2. $2. She had been saving every penny for months, working double shifts at a diner, skipping meals, sleeping in her car to save money. She had exactly $2.47 to her name. She used $2 to buy the lighthouse at the county auction. The lighthouse had been built in 1893 by the United States Coast Guard to guide ships safely through the treacherous waters of the Pacific Northwest. It had been operated continuously for over 100 years, maintained by lighthouse keepers who had lived in small cottages at its base. But in 1994, automated systems had replaced the keepers, and the lighthouse was decommissioned. For nearly 30 years, it sat abandoned on the cliff, weathered by salt air and storms, forgotten by everyone except the seabirds that nested in its lantern room. The first day Emma visited her new property, she climbed the spiral stairs inside the lighthouse tower. The stairs were cast iron, cold beneath her hands as she gripped the railing. Higher and higher she climbed, her footsteps echoing in the empty cylinder of the tower. The windows at each level showed expanding views of the ocean, the Sound, the distant mountains. By the time she reached the lantern room at the top, 130 feet above the ground, she could see for miles in every direction. But it was when she descended into the keeper's cottage at the base of the lighthouse that she discovered something extraordinary. The cottage had a small basement, damp and dark, filled with decades of accumulated items. Emma brought a flashlight and began exploring carefully. In the corner, beneath a pile of old newspapers and blankets, she found wooden crates. Heavy crates. She opened the first one slowly. Inside was a painting. A genuine oil painting, framed in dark wood, depicting a ship in stormy seas. The painting was beautiful, dramatic, the waves rendered in thick brushstrokes, the ship's sails billowing with wind. Emma's hands trembled as she carefully removed it from the crate. She had no experience with art, but she could feel that this was something valuable, something precious. She opened the second crate. Another painting. A landscape this time, showing the lighthouse itself, painted from the water, with a keeper standing on the gallery railing. Crate after crate revealed more paintings. Seascapes mostly, rendered in the style of early 20th century maritime artists. Ships in various seas. Lighthouses along different coasts. Storms and calm waters. Sunrises and sunsets. Each painting was signed with a name, Charles Frederick Hartwell, 1905 through 1947. Emma found a journal in a wooden box beneath the paintings. The journal belonged to Charles Frederick Hartwell, the lighthouse keeper who had served at this lighthouse from 1922 to 1947. The journal entries described his love of painting, his daily observations of the sea, his decision to paint what he saw from the lighthouse every single day for 25 years. He had created over 100 paintings during his tenure, documenting the changing seasons, the changing light, the changing moods of the ocean. Dated 1947, Charles had written, "I am retiring from the lighthouse service. These paintings are my life's work. I have painted this view for 25 years, and I could never leave them. So I am leaving them here, in the place where they were born, in the hope that someday someone who loves this place as much as I do will find them and understand their value. Not their monetary value, but their value as a record of beauty, of time, of a man's attempt to capture the infinite in paint and canvas." Emma sat in the damp basement of the lighthouse keeper's cottage and wept. She held Charles Hartwell's journal to her chest and understood something profound. This man, 100 years dead, had left his entire life's work in this lighthouse, waiting for her, waiting for someone who had nothing and was willing to see the value in what others had forgotten. She spent the following months carefully restoring the lighthouse and the cottage. She reinforced the cottage foundation. She cleaned and preserved each painting, researching proper conservation techniques online using the free Wi-Fi at the public library. She created a catalog of all 117 paintings, documenting their titles, dates, and subjects. She learned that Charles Hartwell had been a respected maritime painter in his time, his work exhibited in galleries from Seattle to San Francisco. Through research, she discovered that several of his paintings were held in museum collections. The Smithsonian Institution had 2 of his works. The Seattle Art Museum had 3. Museums across the country held examples of his art. But the bulk of his work, the complete collection from his 25 years at the Lighthouse, had been preserved exactly as he had left it, waiting in that basement for 100 years. Emma contacted the Seattle Art Museum. They sent an expert to evaluate the collection. The expert wept when she saw the paintings. She said they represented the most complete collection of Charles Hartwell's work in existence. The paintings documented a unique perspective on the Pacific Northwest coast during a transformative period in American history. The collection was invaluable not just financially, but historically and artistically. The museum offered to purchase the entire collection and preserve it in their climate-controlled storage and exhibition spaces. Emma negotiated carefully, ensuring that the paintings would be cared for, that Charles Hartwell would be remembered, that his $2 gift to her would transform into something beautiful and permanent. The money from the sale was enough to pay for her education. She enrolled in college, studying art history and conservation. She became an apprentice restorer at the Seattle Art Museum. She transformed the lighthouse into a small gallery space, where visitors could come and learn about Charles Hartwell's life and work. She hosted monthly exhibitions of contemporary artists who were inspired by the same landscapes that had inspired Charles. Emma is now 24 years old. She has her own home, her own career, her own future. She has transformed from a homeless young woman with nothing into an art curator and conservator. And it all began with $2 and a forgotten lighthouse keeper's paintings. Every morning, Emma climbs the spiral stairs of the lighthouse and looks out at the same view that Charles Hartwell looked out at 100 years ago. She can see the storms and the calm waters, the light changing through the seasons, the beauty that he spent 25 years trying to capture. And she understands that sometimes, the greatest treasures are not gold or jewels or money. Sometimes the greatest treasures are the records of beauty left behind by people who loved deeply and painted what they loved. Emma Grace Sullivan was 20 years old and homeless when she bought an abandoned lighthouse for $2. It was the best $2 she ever spent. Because what she found there was not just a collection of paintings. She found proof that beauty endures. That love transcends time. That sometimes a homeless girl can become an artist simply by learning to see the world the way an old lighthouse keeper saw it 100 years ago. If you believe that forgotten things can be beautiful again, subscribe to this channel.